fantastic there's one day only every year. This year I had the privilege of going with Carolyn Smith, our chef. Diane went with me, as well as Jolie or Giovanna, who's not here today. But they all traveled to Michigan with me, and we white knuckled it back in a snowstorm. But it was fantastic. But while we were there, one of the presenters was Nick Welty with 9 Bean Farms. And I was just blown away because he was doing spin without even knowing that's what it was, the kind of technique. And telling his success stories from the highs and the lows of what he's doing and what he's in. This person is actually doing it. He is still doing it, is going back home in 200 inches of snow and still recovering crops and selling all year round farm. Now, so without further ado, let's go ahead and hear from Nick Welty. Thank you.
Thanks. I just threw that picture up quick because that is 2 days ago. We're harvesting carrots. That just gives you a little perspective for, I think the mentality you need to have if you're going into this kind of business, you're going to have to be a survivor. And you're going to have to put the effort in, and if you want to make income year round, well, hey, I'm still growing and selling products, so what you got to do? Alright, so first I just want to have a couple little bit of survey questions. How many people out here have experience working on a farm? Fair number, okay. How many of you are farming right now? How many of you own a farm? We've got a few farm owners out here. Okay, alright, cool. So, a little bit of breakdown. How many of you want to be a farmer? I think did I see some hands go up to our farmers and then go up on the second question? Alright, I want to start this out by giving a history of how I got to where I am today. And some of that comes down to the family history. So part of this is, I grew up on a farm in Ohio. We had what I would call the standard Midwestern farm from the last century. We had about 100 acres, we had corn, we had soybeans, we had hay crops, and we did wheat occasionally. Never made a whole lot of money doing it, but we were surviving. As a family of 4, I don't think we ever had more than $20,000 a year worth of income between the family, but it was enough. We pinched our pennies. Growing up, we never had snack food because that was too expensive. We ate what we had provided, and usually you set it on the table, divided it into fourths. You ate your fourth, hope mom didn't eat all hers, so we find what was left. So, I started my farming history actually when I was 13 years old. I started my first farm business. And it's a matter of taking what small resources I had, what I had available to me, putting those things together. And I have another presentation I talk about where I talk about season extension because that's really where I take my farm to the next level. And really just by scrounging together as little as $50, you can creatively produce not a move house, but you can produce a low tunnel. Not high tunnels, but low tunnels. And you can start with low tunnels and you can build an incredible business on that just by building the size and scale of things you're doing. So, with that farming operation, I had grown and expanded the size of homemade structures that I could produce. And part of what I was doing was growing giant pumpkins. Some people may have seen those floating around, but that was what got me initially interested. So it's important to understand your passion. What are you passionate about? The reason that I go and spend the amount of effort that I do on my business is because I'm passionate about producing crops. For whatever reason, pumpkins always fascinated me. Wandering out there in the fall and finding that large orange globe, that got me going. It motivated me to put the amount of time in. And this is a picture of some of my extensive melon and squash growing operation that I built on the family farm. Unfortunately, the family farm did not last. Because what my father was doing on that farm was producing crops and selling them directly into a commodity market where he didn't have control of his price structure. Eventually, the prices fell to a point where he could no longer produce his crop and receive a profit for it. The model of farming which he was using was flawed. He could have opted to get some government support for the farm, but he decided, rather than doing that or going into debt to buy seeds, he had to sell the farm. So the farm was no longer lush, beautiful farmland. It became a space where houses are popping up in the countryside. The family farm disappeared, and that was approximately 9 years ago, which was a very sad point for us as a family. It was our livelihood. My dad actually started that farm himself when he was in 7th grade. He convinced my grandfather to purchase a tract of land, and at that time in history, land was pretty darn cheap. He got it, he built that farm essentially from scratch, tearing out old briars and building pasture and built up a complete hog operation. He had 200 head fair to finish on that farm as well. We produced all of our own feed within the farm operation. It was a fantastic system. He had put his entire life into it. One year, money wasn't coming in. He had no other outlets for his product, no way of turning that beautiful, productive farm into something that was actually making money for us. But that wasn't the end of the story. Because when my dad sold the farm, he made a little bit of money off of it, paid off everything that he owed, and he went and moved into a small house somewhere else. I left the farm, and at the time I was convinced that farming was a dumb idea. I watched my dad not make very much money at it, and in the end lose everything he had worked for in his entire life. So I wanted to go do something that could make money. So what I did is I went to college, gained as much education as I possibly could. It's one of those things where I believe in learning, and I believe learning does more for you than just picking up a degree. My brother and I are the first people in our family history, aunts, uncles, cousins, nephews, grandparents, whatever, that have ever gone to college and graduated from college. That experience, while people may say it seems a little bit crazy seeing as how now I'm just a farmer, but I went to school and I have training in the detailed aspects that are the foundation for my farm. I have a lot of training in biology, in economics, in chemistry. The elemental level of the farm. I don't have any actual farm training because, well, I grew up on a farm. I learned it the hard way. And the most important thing that you can learn in terms of what makes a farm work is hard work. So, when I moved to Michigan, I moved there after I graduated from college, and that was the very end of 2006. And my wife and I had been discussing the idea of potentially starting a business at some point, but we're really sort of unclear. It sounded like a good idea. Many of you may be thinking that, hey, could I have my own business? How many of you out here have a job? How many of you have a farm and no other income besides your farm? Awesome. That's the way to be.
I don't know.
So, my goal, even though the first time I started my own business was when I was 13 years old, I'd always been in the back of my mind, I would like to be in a position where I don't have to work for anybody else. I can control my own destiny. I can create my own business. So, that is in the back of my mind. I moved to Michigan, and I was trying to position myself in a way that I could do something different than what my father was doing. The key to that, the absolute key to the success of what I'm about to tell you that I did, is that I moved from where my father was at. And it had nothing to do with the productivity of his farmland. It had nothing to do with the knowledge or ability to grow and produce crops. Really, this was the most important thing that was going to make my business succeed. Anybody have a guess?
Outlets.
Desperation.
Market.
Outlets.
The market I had, exactly. The people who live in the Traverse City area in northern Michigan are people who know food and who appreciate food. And the difference in what I'm about to do is I am going to be producing food. What my father was doing is growing crops. It may seem like a subtle difference, but it's a psychological difference in your approach to how you're running your farm. The basics connections I made up there were started with a partnership with Black Star Farms. which is a winery estate. They have horse boarding, they have an inn, there's a creamery, tasting room, all sorts of fantastic things happening up there. I was fortunate enough, and partners with it in your community are key. And I will emphasize that as well. Making good connections within your community between yourselves and other people who are nearby who are already successful. The person who owned this farm was one of the state commissioners for agriculture. He located me once I had moved to northern Michigan and hired me to come and work to manage his farm. And that was the first real job I ever had. Aside from the fact that I had income coming in, the knowledge and experience I gained working on that farm let me learn how to manage, how to operate, and gave me connections beyond that within the community at the state level in terms of understanding finances, funding, and where those resources could come from. The inspiration, as it was, for starting my own business may not have been the ideal situation. My wife and I had just, we were just starting out our lives. We had just purchased our first house. Would have been 2 to 3 years before that, so we were a little bit into, making the payments on our mortgage. We both had jobs, and we had just really had our first really good year. We both had jobs, we're making money, things are looking good, and then, pretty much exactly 5 years ago today, we both got a 2-week notice from our employers. The stock market had crashed. He wasn't really financing his farm from planning a good business that was going to make money off the farm. He was doing it because he was rich. And so he just kept throwing money into the farm. Well, when the stock market crashed, his money went away. The farm wasn't making any money. And my wife and I both lost our jobs. So if you can imagine that picture I showed before I started this presentation, right about this time of the year, you're way north of here with 5 feet of snow on the ground and no money. That's when we decided to start our own business. Because it was our best avenue of finding income. And, as I had said, I was always looking for a way to make myself independent so that I could control my own finances, I could control my own food production, and hopefully provide a steady income for my family. The most important part of this business planning process, there's the path that led me into this. And what I want to talk about, a quick diversion from that presentation, is the evolution of our farm business. Now most people will talk to you about acres in production, amount of farmers markets you might be selling at, the market avenues, the amount of products and types of products that you have, that you're developing. The real key to growing and developing this business is actually focusing on the business itself. The idea that I am throughout the process of this is not growing and developing different crops and markets, although I am. It's the fundamental key behind all of that. The fact that I am developing a more efficient and a more resilient and better tuned plan for operations and understanding the finances of this farm business. So I want to give you just a quick summary of my first 2 years and how I went from losing my job, and at that point in time, for the year of 2009, my wife and I managed to collect about $10,000 worth of unemployment, and we were pretty much dependent on whatever we could grow, produce, and sell, and how we could make that work to pay our mortgage so we didn't lose our house, and have enough money coming in to pay our utilities and our bills. And this is how I went from really only on 2 weeks' notice, which I didn't have a lot of time to plan because clearly I'd been thinking about this, but I had not done what all of you are doing throughout this course, which is actually making a real plan. So I was thrown into this. But through the process, I started to make my plan. So fortunately, I had already made my own LLC. The keys to what we were going to do to make this work, my wife is a talented baby. If you have people within your family that have particular talents and interests, once again, find what you're passionate about, because quality is key. You're not going to produce the highest quality product if you're not extremely passionate about it. And I'm a stickler for perfectionism, and sometimes people who work for me might get tired of that, but in my mind, no product I produce is ever good enough until it's the best product that there is in the world. That is the attitude you have to have on every single thing that leads your farm. And if you don't have that attitude, you're not going to keep commanding the high prices you want at the markets. The other key right here is 12 months of the year. There's a certain amount of discipline that you have to have in a traditional farming model, where you have one season and only a few crops. A short period of the year in which you can make all of your income. You must follow that model. You will have to have the discipline to budget that money for all of the months you are not bringing in income. In my particular case, I couldn't afford to make that system work because I was already committed to the mortgage of my house, which meant I need to make payments on a 12-month basis. And for me, I want to look at a business that's going to provide me income, cash flow, 12 months of the year. I don't take months off from eating, usually, right? So,
There you go.
I got to keep making this money happen. This gives, just for reference, a little bit of a summary of how I grew the farm.
Okay.
The key for me in the cash flow model was a CSA. How many of you, everybody know what a CSA is out here? Everybody who doesn't know what a CSA is.
You can repeat it in English.
Okay. Community supported agriculture, for those of us here in the States, it is a subscription-based model of farming. So when I started out, I didn't have any cash. I even probably had a little more credit card debt than I should have, considering we both had jobs. But I needed income. I needed cash in the bank right now to buy seeds, to buy a few simple hand tools, get some irrigation supplies, so that I could produce the high-quality products I needed for my market. The CSA provided me membership money up front, where the CSA members paid me in advance for this. And I think that is a fantastic model for a startup farm. The key to this is also, with the CSA, it's a subscription. I get the money, and then I have to deliver. Which means I have to deliver. So, you don't want to overcommit yourself on this. And you have to understand your knowledge and experience. I had experience growing a lot of different kinds of plants. For my giant pumpkin growing, I had a couple of world championships in competitive vegetable growing, so I had a good knowledge of how to grow something. So I felt fairly confident. And you can see here, I actually started out the farm with 18 CSA members. And I operate the CSA in quarters because I want to have this as a 12-month round income, right? So I have 12 weeks at a time. 18 members when I started in March of 2009. Then the summer of 2009, I increased it to 35 members. Then I decreased it in the fall more to 22 members. In the winter, down to 16. And then the second year, I was looking at being able to really expand what I'm doing, and things grew. In the springtime, when the sunlight returned, I was able to get up to 42 members. In the summer, 50. Back down to 40 in the fall. And then over the winter time, down to 19 again. So I have some fluctuation with the seasons because there is only a limit to what I can do. One of the key elements to allowing me to make this expansion in the wintertime was actually that I creatively financed an NRCS-funded hoop house. And adding that to my farm was very important for providing income throughout the winter. So, the process continues. You can see there on the left side of the screen the very first season extension device that I ever produced. And that was when I was 13 years old. I took some screws, fastened two windows together, and a little bit of plastic.
What is it?
Pumpkin.
It's a pumpkin. All that effort for a stupid pumpkin, but hey, what is it? So, but that idea grew. Now on the side here, you can actually see a 34-foot by 144-foot long hoop house. And that's the hoop house I have at my house. And just by taking time and planning, I was able to get from that to that.
You said creatively financed.
All right. I have some finance education background, so I'm always on the outlook for where can I get the money I need for my next project, because that's important. I don't have big sacks of cash sitting somewhere I can go use. I look within my community, and it's a very important thing to develop is knowing the resources you have within your community. In our area, we have a community action agency. They provide what's called an IDA, an individual development account. This is designed for people who have very little income, may have debt, and are trying to either buy a house or start a business. If you can prove that you have the discipline to budget yourself and save money on a monthly basis, in this case, I managed to save every month for a year until I had saved up $1,000. The IDA program matches that $1,000 with an additional $2,000. So once I managed to meet my savings goal, prove I had the discipline to save money every month, the program matched me and I withdrew $3,000. At the time, NRCS funding was much less than it is today. So I was able to finance about $7,000 worth of the hoop house through the NRCS. Well, the hoop house cost $10,000. I didn't have another extra $3,000 laying around. But by using the IDA program, I was able to finance that entire hoop house without any expense to myself. And that's how I found creative pieces within the community that I could put together to add what I need to my farm to make it productive. So, this is where I am today. Our farm has grown dramatically, and the bakery aspect that my wife is managing has gone extremely well. The bakery developed to the point where in the second and third year of business, we needed another way to produce income in the wintertime. We opened up our own cafe where I could serve fresh food from the farm, I could sell fresh farm products, and we could serve my wife's baking business. Another way to continue selling throughout the wintertime when I don't have all the outdoor farmers markets to sell at. And that was key, once again, to changing the growth of the business, finding ways I can keep adding income to my farm business. It also gives me an opportunity. Like I said, my idea was, I get pretty premium prices for my salad greens. I might get $16 to $20 a pound for my salad greens. But you know what? That's not enough money. I need more money than that. So, what I can do now is I can put an ounce of salad greens on a plate and I can sell it for $4. A little bit of balsamic vinaigrette and you're all set. So now I get even more money from the farm products that I grow. So what are you planning for on your farm? This is a very important consideration. I know you guys have gone through a level of farm business discussion, business planning. Well, the key to the business planning is that you're planning a business. I think, a few sessions ago you should have talked about your personal goals, your internal goals, your external goals. Try to consider that range of aspects of what's going on around you. And like I say, that's very important because you need to understand your passions and you need to understand that you're going to be willing to put in the effort it takes to get this started. Because the startup process will be very strenuous. So do something you're passionate about so that you can control that quality, but at the same time, the underlying key to the success will be how you look at the business as a truly driven business model.
Nick, hold just a second, please. If anyone wants anything else from over there, food-wise or so, please grab it and snacks, not to interfere with Nick's presentation, but quietly do it, please, because soon after, our chef is going to be taking Nick to the airport, so they need to start the process of cleaning up. Okay? So just quietly get any other snacks or anything. Thank you. Continue, Nick.
Yep.
Sorry.
Okay, so when I'm looking at this, there are a few key pieces that I'm looking at for how I'm planning the farm. I'm planning the farm business for my family because I need income for my family. I need to provide for my family.
Right.
That is first on my list. For me as a priority, the dirt, the soil. For me, the soil is the fundamentally most important ancestors are gone, that will be the long-lasting and permanent impact of the farm. How and what condition I can leave that soil in is absolutely key to me. The farm. And when you think about your farm, you have to think about what image you want to have when you're walking into that farm. What you're thinking of in terms of the assets you have, the buildings, the fences, the irrigation system, the cannery, the processing kitchen. Those pieces of the farm as a whole that are going to work together to produce the products that you need to make income for your family. And the business, the cash flow, the assets versus debt that you've accumulated. Think about how that's going to evolve. So the first thing that I want to talk about is the business, because I think that is the most important. And if you start at the bottom of that list and work backwards toward this top of the list, that is how you can achieve each of those different objectives you're planning for. So the business is something that you need to think of as an entity outside of yourself. The farm is not your hobby. It's not something you're kind of working with. It is a creation of yours. You are separate from your farm, and your farm is separate from you. So in order to put together the farm and this business plan, the two most important parts of any business plan are, number one, the financials. And I think you guys are going to get a decent amount of financial training and understanding of how you can put together the financial projections, which is absolutely key, because those financial projections will make your budget. They will make a projected timeline that you can follow and understand if you're meeting your objectives, falling short on your objectives, and your record-keeping ability will help you determine why, so you can correct it or reformulate your plan. The other very important part is the people. People. If you go to a bank, if you go to an investor, you'll find that they'll be interested to see that you have done a great job with your financials. But the people who make up your team is absolutely critical. The basics idea between making the right team to match your business plan. You need a set of skills, and you need a set of interests that can encompass the range of things you are trying to do with your business. Where you're selling your product, how you're selling your product, how you're producing your products. All of those different aspects take a certain set of skills. So on the small farm, you're going to look at needs in a lot of different areas. For me, I have a very wide range of interests. The idea of having a farm fascinates me because it allows me to have an avenue for a lot of different things I'm interested in doing. But you need to understand what you're good at and what you're not good at. Here is a wide range of skills that you're going to need on the farm. If you don't have all of those skills, if you're missing some of those skills, and you will be, because not everybody can be good at all of these different things. It's very good to be introspective, to look at the big picture and understand yourself and your farm business, so that you can identify where you're short. And don't hesitate to find more team members within your community who have the skills you're lacking and work together, because having all of the right skills will make this work. So it's going to take a combination of people skills, marketing, managing employees. One of the most important aspects of why some of the larger scale farming has not worked out well is because there isn't a connection between the people and the food that is produced. And you will find that your highest paying customers will pay you, number one, for the quality of your food, and number two, for the personal relationship they establish with you as their food producer. And understanding that is absolutely critical. The food, being passionate about the flavor, the quality, the diversity, how you cook it, how you prepare it, is absolutely essential to how you can connect with those consumers. Because many of these people will be interested in the food you're growing, technically savvy, solving problems is an ever ongoing problem on farms. There's always going to be a mechanical aspect towards working with tools, designing systems, and workflow within the farm. And the most important, most farmers' favorite job is not sitting in the office working on the computer. Making sure that you have someone who is going to dot your I's and cross your T's all the time is essential. When I look at this and I examine people, there are three major components to a person which contribute to their ability to run a business. The entrepreneur, the manager, and the technician. The entrepreneur is the person who has the vision, who has the ideas. Those are all fantastic things, but if you have a lot of visions and ideas, it's not going to make you any money if you're not producing something, which is why you need the technician. The technician is the person who actually gets things done. So you need that inherent ability to just do things. And some people will have a very high percentage of one of these and not the others. But even then, if you have somebody doing a lot of things, and somebody with a great amount of vision, you can have things just happening all over the place. The final absolute key is the manager. The manager is the one who's going to be dotting your I's and crossing your T's, making sure the record keeping happens, making sure that you know where you're at with your current budget as opposed to your projected budget for your business plan. So you have to have these different elements in place while your business is forming, growing, and operating. So, make sure you find your team, because you're going to need all of those different aspects. And know within yourself what you're short on. Don't be, upset because you don't have a particular skill. Just know that you need that skill. And I can guarantee you can find that skill within someone within your community. And make a partnership that will work. You have the entire team you need to have a successful farm business. So when we're building the farm business plan, the key aspects to this, on a large scale, equity, the plan as it is described, and building your business assets. So once you've determined your strategic goals, which I think everybody has, one of the things that's often missed with your two strategies in terms of your personal goals and your business goals is looking at how you're going to develop assets within the farm. And that's one of those things where you need to make sure you have enough money coming in to pay your bills, but a larger portion of actually planning your business is how you're going to build net worth. So I might bring in $15,000 of cash that I put in my pocket my first year of business farming. That was fantastic. But that wasn't the most important part of what I accomplished within that first year. The most important part was I developed a business which accumulated equipment that I paid for with the business. It accumulated cropland that I had worked. I had amended compost to it and becoming more productive. And I developed markets for my products. Those are the key assets. So the assets within your farm, the number one asset is first the land, because that is the footprint you have to work with on your farm. How you're going to tie that land together is very important, and have a plan